Welcome to 2nd Armored's Vehicle Identification course. In this short video, we will go over how to correctly identify each vehicle in Hell Let Loose. Correct identification is crucial, as different types of vehicles pose a different threat and must be dealt with accordingly. We will review each faction's vehicles separately, starting right here with the United States. This will be the most difficult faction to correctly identify, since there are 3 different variants of the Sherman tank, and all US vehicles have the same olive drab paint scheme. The first vehicle we'll go over is the M8 Greyhound. The M8 Greyhound is the American recon vehicle, capable of engaging both infantry and light armor. Now, the biggest giveaway on this one is the fact that it's the only armored vehicle on the American side that doesn't have tracks. As you can see, it just has 3 wheels on each side, making this the easiest to correctly identify. Now, the next vehicle on our list is the M5A1 Stuart light tank. Now, apart from this being the only American tank that isn't a Sherman, this vehicle is also easy to identify due to its small size, thin gun, and short tracks. This is primarily an anti-infantry weapon. However, its 37mm cannon is capable of taking on and destroying enemy armor. Here, we have the M4A1 Sherman, commonly referred to in-game as a 75 medium. The easiest way to identify a 75 medium is to look at the hull. The 75 medium does not have any gear attached to the sides or rear of the tank like its bigger brother, the 75 Jumbo, and there are white stars visible on both sides of the hull, in addition to a white star inside a white circle here on the very front. The M4A3E2 Sherman is referred to in-game as a Jumbo 75. This tank can be identified by the large antenna protruding from the back of the turret, in addition to the various gear attached to the sides and to the rear of the tank. Unlike the 75 medium, this tank's white stars are painted on the turret instead of the hull, along with the first in Bastogne painted on the left side, as you can see here. The M4A3E8, or EZ8, is referred to in the game as a Jumbo 76. The most obvious feature of this tank is the large 76mm main gun with the muzzle brake on the end. This tank also has gear attached to the right side and rear of its hull. The left side of the tank is fairly clean, with a pinup girl painted toward the front. The front hull has a white star painted inside a circle. Rounding out the American vehicles, we have the M3 Halftrack, the transport truck, and the supply truck. Both of the transport and supply trucks are standard American 2.5-ton trucks, the only difference really being the supply truck having the cover, whereas the transport truck has the back left open. Finally, the M3 Halftrack, as the name suggests, has a track in the back and wheels in the front. There's also a mounted machine gun position located to the right of the driver's seat. The next faction we'll be covering is the Germans. Unlike the Americans, each tank model is unique. However, many of the tanks can look similar from a distance, and it is vital that your teammates know which type they are dealing with. Thankfully, there are subtle differences in each variant that will allow you to correctly identify each one at a glance, as long as you know what to look for. We'll begin with the German recon vehicle, the Puma. The first thing you'll notice about the Puma is that, like all recon vehicles, it utilizes wheels instead of tracks. Now, this is the most unique looking of all of the German armor, and correctly identifying it should not be much of a problem, even at a great distance. The Panzer II, or Lux, is the German light tank. Oftentimes, this tank can be heard well before it's seen due to its rapid-fire 20mm high-explosive cannon. If nobody's called out its location yet, don't be afraid to mention in command chat that you hear one, as commanders will be alerted that there's one in the area. Once visible, the small cannon at the front of the turret and the vehicle's small stature will make the Panzer II easy to correctly identify. Next is the Panzer IV, the German medium tank. This tank has often been misidentified as a Tiger at range, so it's important to go over the distinguishing characteristics to avoid confusion. The biggest difference between a Panzer IV and the Tiger is the turret. The Panzer's IV turret is small and thin with sloped sides. In addition, the tracks look much different, with 8 small wheels on the bottom of the tread, compared to the large wheels of the Tiger. The Panther is the first of 2 German heavy tanks, and is the easiest to correctly identify. The Panther has sloped front and side armor, as well as protective side skirts on the top of the tank tread. When calling out the location of a Panther, it's very important to note the direction it's facing, as this sloped armor makes ricochets very likely, unless it is engaged from the side or the rear. The other German heavy tank is the vaunted Tiger I. The Tiger can be identified from the side by the large wheels that make up the tank tread and from the spare tracks mounted to the side of the turret. The rear of the Tiger contains 2 large tanks that make good aiming points for friendly armor to engage. Again, calling out the facing direction of a Tiger is crucial, as many Allied tanks can only successfully engage a Tiger from the rear. The remaining German vehicles are fairly easy to identify, just like the American faction. First, we have the German Halftrack, which, just like the American counterpart, has half track, half wheels, and the right of the driver's seat has a MG-42 mounted machine gun position. The 2 trucks utilized by the Germans are the Opel Blitz, with the only difference between the two is the transport truck seen here has the open top, whereas the supply truck on the left has the covered back. Last but not least, we have the Russian faction. With only 2 distinct tank variants with vastly different characteristics, the Russian faction is by far the easiest to identify. Now, if this half-track looks familiar to you, it's because it is. This is an American M3 half-track repainted in Russian paint scheme. This is not a lazy choice by the developers. The M3 was actually a Lend-Lease product that was delivered to the Russians. The Soviet recon vehicle is the BA-10. It's easily identified by its small, thin wheels and top-heavy design featuring a rear-mounted turret. The Soviet medium tank is the iconic T-34, one of the first tanks developed with sloped armor to increase thickness without compromising on speed and maneuverability. Its design later inspired the Germans to develop the Panther. The T-34 is identified primarily by its small, thin turret mounted on the front half of its chassis. Lastly, we come to the Soviet heavy tank, the IS-1. With its massive 85mm main gun, the IS-1 can easily penetrate the armor of any German tank from any angle. The easiest way to identify the IS-1 is by its large, bulbous turret and sloping rear armor. This is a priority target for any friendly armor or anti-tank squad, and it is vital that enemy forces know the location of it as soon as it enters the battlefield. Lastly, just like the other factions, we have the transport truck and the supply truck. The only difference between these 2 trucks are in the truck bed. As you can see here with the supply truck, there are 2 large supply crates mounted on the bed, whereas here in the transport truck the bed is empty. This concludes our course on vehicle identification. On behalf of all of us at 2nd Armored, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the battlefield.